the link.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to show number 69 of This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing. I am one of your hosts, Mr. Lauren Gray with Hospitality Digital Marketing. With me is the ever-present and omnipotently knowledgeable Mr. Edward St. Ange from Flip2. Hello, good morning, Mr. Ed.
Good morning.
And always the statistician and fact checker himself, the man who needs no explanation, hot off the trail of Focusrite International, Mr. Robert Cole from Rock Cheetah.
Some people don't. Ed doesn't need an introduction. I don't need an explanation, but that's okay.
We did, up until the moment of this, have Mr. Alex with Alice with us, but just as we went to launch live, he left. I think it was because of my echoing voice. I'm not sure. It has to be something like that.
I think it was the song that I mentioned. I'll post a link.
Although, as promised, cryptic references to the jokes in the green room.
Exactly.
That's true.
Exactly.
That's true. It could be because of the jokes in the green room. I am, for that, we also are Facebook Live, and I'm trying to TriCast with our Periscope group.
Oops. Oh, I can hear me.
I can hear you. I am, for that, we also are Facebook Live, and I'm going to have to shut off the echo there.
There you are.
Yes, I would.
This TriCasting stuff is getting complicated with two computers.
TriCast. Well, I think you need a third computer.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I have to justify my expenses with third computer. All right, gentlemen, as we wait for Mr. Alex to rejoin us.
I've got an item.
Let's hear it. Bring it on.
Let's hear it, Mr. Robert. Go right ahead. That'll give me a chance to go play with Periscope a little bit more.
That's right. Okay, I wrote a blog post for the first time in a year. It was a little short one for me, but figured last time I posted was November 30th of last year. But,
what are you talking about? You post like 3,000 Twitter posts a day.
Officially on the blog, yeah. But that's a little odd. That's my little bot that does that fire hose. But anyway, just a little review of the stats of the U.S. hotel industry that actually, interestingly, the depth of the global financial crisis in 2009 happened to be Thanksgiving week. And the ADR for the U.S. hotel industry was $84.81.
Wow.
And last week, it was, let's see, what was it last week? 107.66, and that's normally like a low week. So basically the compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, was a growth of about, and if you look at that as kind of the baseline for low demand, has been about 3.5% for ADR growth. Now, if you look at a peak week, which is normally the third week of July, that CAGR is about 4.2%. So that's kind of the range of where, over the last 7 years, the growth rate is, again, from the bottom of the pit to where we are now. The interesting thing, though, is that this year to date, the year-over-year ADR growth is about 3.2%. So we are plateauing. Finally. And I look at my friends, and with all due respect to the folks at Lodging Econometrics and STR and CBRE and all those guys, they get very, very excited about the potential for the year, and everything is going to look good. And they generally revise their forecast down 2 or 3 times as the year gets closer to a close. So the latest numbers from STR, they're forecasting occupancy to drop year over year by about 0.5 point, or 50 basis points. And then they're going to also look at ADR growth of something like 2.8%, which, if you're looking at revenue dropping off like that, or occupancy dropping off, I don't see it. I don't know. I think it's going to be a plateau year. It's going to be very interesting. And that kind of tees things up for Alex, because it's really going to be about guest engagement and how you really, develop the relationships with these guests, so they will come to you and stay with you and go from there, because it's going to be a fight on trying to get things at the top line and marketing expense, and trying to get people to book direct versus OTA. But the real the real fight is performing well and providing a great experience for the guests, and that's what kind of wins out in the long term. So
it looks like it was a good blog post, by the way. I was giving you a hard time. That I just wanted to remind everyone that following you on Twitter is a nightmare.
The following Rock Cheetah is a nightmare, and there are 1,300 people. I think it just went over. It may have gone over 300,000 posts, but there are a few people.
Go into some advanced marketing analysis. All 1,300 of those people are also just huge fans of 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh. That's
quite a non sequitur to walk in on.
and speaking of 50 Shades of Grey, Tim Peter joins us. Wow.
Actually, 50 Shades of is what I call Lauren.
That's right, 50 Shades. 50
Lauren,
Shades.
50 Shades
So,
of.
guys, to be kind to Alex.
Absolutely.
Yes.
He's now regretting his choice to come on.
Yeah, he's like, man, I should have just stayed off.
I signed up.
Yes, and I've been distracted playing with technology. My apologies. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, we brought you on board to solve the questions of the universe, especially when it comes to guest interaction and, of course, what Alice is doing, and to make all of us look good and sound good, because between your accent and your well-designed fashion sense, it can only help but improve this motley crew.
and his fancy microphone.
And his exceptionally fancy microphone.
Yes,
nice.
A blue.
Yeah. So, Mr. Alex, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, as well as, of course, whatever topics you would like to bring into with the Alice conversation, please.
Absolutely. So I'm Alexander Shashou. I'm one of the co-founders of Alice. I've placed our logo up on my left shoulder for those who don't know it. So we at Alice, what we've done is we've built an operations platform. But operations is less sexy than marketing, is less sexy than guest experience. And the reason we call it an operations platform is simply because, well, that's what we do. We actually started in the guest side. 4 years ago, when myself and my partner started out, bright-eyed and bushy, we wanted to build a guest application that allowed guests to engage with their hotels. What we found was that after much research, we thought the industry was actually tackling it in the wrong way. The industries that you love today, the industries that you use and that's on your phone, what they've successfully done is taken the idea of guest experience and delivered it through an integration into the back end. They have thought about the entire service delivery chain. So I've been invited, and our lens is always to shine an operational lens on guest experience, because at the end of the day, someone goes to a hotel because they like the service. It's more than a bed. I think it's more than an Airbnb as well. And so, I hope today that I can help shed a little bit of best practices, best light on where I think maybe marketing is missing their cutting edge, where I think marketing could take it one step further and focus on much more than just the booking experience, but how do you turn your guests into actual promoters of your brand? How do you turn them into the best Flip2 users there are in the world? And of course, Ed paid me to say that, so I'll send my check. But that's our lens. We started in the guest experience with a mobile app, and we ended in the guest experience with an operations platform that really is being used by staff to improve their guest experience. And how do we do it? Through giving digital tools and mobile access.
Alex, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, Alex,
you're
freezing on us, sir. Nope, we can hear you, but you are frozen.
And
we should be okay, I think.
So while he's curing his technical ailment there, the real reason I wanted to bring him on is, Lauren, about a month ago, you had asked about these guest communications companies, and I noticed you had Alice in there, and I said to you, there's a really big difference here. One of the key differentiators is Alice actually went through the work of making sure that if you implement guest communications and through all these different channels, that you can actually do it well and do it repetitively and do it in a way that it doesn't kill your staff. And so, this is one of the key reasons I wanted him to come on, because sure, you can SMS people because of Alice. You can SMS people because of a lot of things. But Alice makes sure that you can deliver the customer expectations, with your current staffing, and you can do it in a way that you can be proud of. It'll be on brand for you. So that's really up, and he's back. So there you go. I was
Alex, sorry. He was doing your intern for you.
Yeah, that's very kind. Ed and Justin, my partner, were both at a conference this week hearing each other pitch. So hopefully he does it better than Justin.
So maybe Alex, what you could talk about, Ed was just saying how, when you look at a lot of, let's call them guest communications technologies, which is probably who people sometimes lump you in with, whether or not that's accurate or not. But can you talk a little bit about what that actually looks like from the point of view of the guest and from the point of view of the hotelier, and what makes Alice different in that regard?
Yeah, so I think it's all contextual. There are so many different tools out there to communicate with guests, and there are so many different guests at different stages of the journey. And, it seems like the industry is throwing small pieces at each one. 4 years ago, we started with apps, and you had everyone saying, let's get an app, because in other industries, apps are working. But then apps were being introduced in the property level way after the booking had happened, way after all that money had been spent on capturing the guest. And so you almost had to start your efforts over again and getting the guest onto it. And then this year, messaging is the hot topic. So, this industry has a hot topic every year. 2 years ago, I think it was beacons. Last year, keyless entry. This year, it's messaging. And everyone's jumping on that in different ways, whether it's Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, SMS, texting. And I think everyone's heading in the right direction. We understand, and the best hotels in the world are starting to understand that they have to communicate on the guest's terms. They have to give guests access to their property at all stages of the journey. Where we're still in the earlier stages is the foundation is not yet there. If your hotel staff are still using pen and paper and radios, they simply can't message into a guest infrastructure, because most of the guest messaging tools today are built from mobile, are built from social. Even the oldest fashioned one is SMS, which is a mobile text messaging solution.
Right.
So hotels are starting to look to us and work with us on how do we build an infrastructure for messaging, not just how do we get the next tool up and running, right? How do we actually connect our staff so that when we actually successfully get guests on messaging, we're able to then deliver on the promise that is the brand expectation. And at the end of the day, as nice as, I don't mean this in a harsh way, guests are not asking staff how their day was and just having a chat. It's not, maybe 40 years ago, you might have a guest who's coming back and asking how your kids are. A guest is very selfish. A guest is messaging you because they want something.
Uh-oh.
It was very selfish of him to freeze at that point.
No, but he makes a great point, because a lot of the hoteliers are out there and they suffer from shiny object syndrome. They need a nap, or they need this, or they need, we got to do this. And then they get it and they think that's the end. Good, we're done.
Check.
Sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We got one of those, and that's probably in many cases I've seen it's actually worse, because they get this.
Yeah, that's right.
The classic was, let's communicate with our guests via Twitter. Wouldn't that be great? And all of a sudden they discovered, the guests want to talk to us when we're like at peak check-in, or overnight when nobody's in the office. And all of a sudden you wind up with this horribly bad guest experience, because you gave them some new tool that they might have actually wanted to use, and then you just have this complete failure.
Well, and it's it's funny, you said shiny object syndrome. I always call it ooh shiny syndrome, but yeah, it's the same idea, right? Because everybody goes ooh shiny, and the challenge is that hoteliers frequently fail to ask, why do we really need this? How does this make the guest experience better, and how does this fit into the overall experience? Adele Gutman said something great. Our good friend Adele from the Library Hotel collection said something great at this past year's Hospitality Digital Marketing Conference in February, where she said one of their core questions for any investment, and this comes from the top down there, is how does this improve the guest experience? And then if the answer is it does, and here's why it improves the guest experience, then they go find the money for it. And if the answer is, what it doesn't, or whatever, or we're just ooh shiny, then they don't bother. It's not worth the investment in many cases. And I think that's a really smart approach and is what is often lacking, rather than, well, somehow this is going to drive more bookings or somehow there's going to be some ROI, without thinking about what does this do to the overall expectation and experience guests have when they interact with you.
Well, and Alex said it. He said, it's not sexy, right? That's the thing. It's like plumbing.
Right.
So, Alice makes your staff more effective so they can do their jobs, right? I mean, that's really the bottom line of it. So.
I'm sorry for the internet issues. I've moved into our main room, so if there's background noise, my apologies. Actually,
Alice, it's great. We're getting kind of a little preview of what Alice looks like. It's like, sure, we see one room, then we see another room. It's kind of like a little tour.
Right. Right.
We are not immune to the technical issues by any stretch. Look at that.
That's all right.
And so, and actually, I think the industry is starting to tackle this exact problem. If you think about HT&G, which is the Hotel Technology Next Generation, they come up with standards. You guys have probably been well versed in them. And one of the standards last year was PBX. And that's very quickly moved into what they're calling now cloud communications, because it's more than just the PBX. It's how do you communicate across your entire property, and then in turn with your guest, right? I think the beauty of Uber is not that you can request something on your app. I've yet to find a guest who hasn't communicated their needs, even if they're hammering it over the phone. What happens with Uber is after you press that button, you're connected with the driver. That driver drives to you. There's so many data points after it. And there's almost an instant feedback loop where you're rating the driver. Uber knows if you had a good or bad experience from a 1 or a 5 star. Very few people give in between.
Right.
I think hotels are yet to find that experience. And I think if I can impress anything, I think the best marketers are starting to look past just booking and say, what is the guest experience? How do we build net promoters? And so at Alice, we look at a very common piece of research called Net Promoter Score. And Net Promoter Score I'm sure it's something you will come across. For those who haven't, Net Promoter Score is the single best judge of loyalty. And it's a metric that was developed, I think, out of Harvard, actually. And the idea was you ask one question, which is, how likely are you to recommend this company to a friend? And if someone's likely to recommend it, that's your promoter. And so how do we look at our guests as promoters, not just on their activity on Flip2 and their actual observation of how much they're promoting it, but understanding during their experience how it's unfolding as to how much would they be a promoter of your brand?
Yeah, well, and you have to be and I agree with you completely, but you have to be a little bit careful with NPS, because I worked with a client. Their NPS scores were off the chart because their product was so freaking unique and amazing. Behind the scenes, they were a disaster. But the product was so good that they overlooked it. Now, most groups can't.
Actually, Robert, I'd then also ask the question, if their product was that good and they were a disaster and their net promoter score was too high, it also sounds like they were underpriced.
Yes, they were compared to their and we're talking
people were getting too much
in
value.
their sector. They were low. It was world class. It was high value, and people loved it. And they kind of overlooked all the flaws, right? Sort of thing. Yep. But for most everybody else who doesn't have that sort of asset or setting and that sort of thing, you can't get away with that. and actually, long term, that will erode. And people just start complaining and go, I don't really like it. It's miserable. And I'll find somebody. And so you will get disrupted because somebody will do it better. So. Right.
And also it can come from any angle. I think to your point, actually, and I appreciate that point, if you think of Blockbuster, I can bet you that Blockbuster's customer satisfaction score was pretty high in the mid-90s. No one saw Netflix coming. And so I'm sure they were pretty satisfied with their satisfaction score.
I actually have a friend who was an investor in Blockbuster, and they did see Netflix coming, and they could have bought it for like a handful of millions.
Yeah, it was
Yahoo passed on Google.
Yeah,
twice.
Right. Yeah, and they overlooked it.
Passed on Google,
and then passed on being bought by Google for more than they. Sorry, Alex. Remember, I warned you we go on tangents.
So they saw it. Well, no, and actually, back in the 90s, because Alex probably isn't old enough to, actually remember Blockbuster. He's heard stories of it, but it's interesting. Since moving back to Dallas, we were with our daughters, and we drove by, and we ate at this restaurant, and it was across the street from the Blockbuster. And the Blockbuster used to be where we went every like Friday. If there was a sleepover with my daughters, they would be in Blockbuster for 45 minutes picking out and it was like this kind of weird social event of what they were going to do. It was this weird kind of cultural thing. And now it's just poof, completely gone. Yeah.
So
completely irrelevant.
Right? Bringing it back full circle to Alice, for everyone who's watching this, for them to understand, really the difference. Alex, as I had told you, Lauren had put up a list of guest communication tools. And I noticed you were on that list. And it was funny because I was like, they're not that. They're more of the organizational side and the platform than they are like a whistle or something like that. And, so to bring this back full circle, when someone is looking at a whistle or what are the other ones? I forget. Lauren, you had a list. One of the key differences between what they've created and what you've created is you've created the solution that actually makes it something a hotel should want to do, where they've created the trap that a hotel is going to get themselves into. Is how I look at it. And I actually don't just say that because I'm a fan of your platform. I'm saying that because you're one of the only ones that have built the full understanding of what a hotel needs to operate into that side of the world.
Yeah, I mean, we just found that it was a little bit too early to build the whistle. Hotel technology doesn't change what you're doing. Technology only enforces what you're already doing. And so housekeeping was already doing housekeeping, concierge. They were just doing it in a siloed manner, and we've put them all on the same service bus almost. And then people do call us a guest engagement tool because effectively we have guest engagement products. We have SMS, we have mobile apps, we have web, and then we have an API. But if the difference I think between us and an app is an app company should be really afraid of Alexa. And I know Alexa was one of the topics later. Yeah, sure. Because I look at Alexa and say, well, maybe that's the next app. It's just the voice recognition. And a company like Alice or other like-minded companies, Alexa is fantastic for us because that's just one more access point that at the end of the voice is a request that we can turn into a request and send it to the right staff member. So Alexa may be our future engagement, apps may be our future engagement. We're okay to it because we've just built the infrastructure to handle it, not the tool that lives by it.
So, Alex, I'm going to ask sort of the mean question, right? The
mean is in averaging everything and bringing it to the middle, or mean is in you're about
to cruel on a Friday morning.
You're about to TC Peter him.
Yeah.
Put you on the hot seat just a little bit, in a very non-threatening way. But the one question I have had asked of me when people look at something like Alex, and I don't know the answer to this, I would love to hear what the answer is when we look at the OTAs and the way that they have become part of the industry, what a lot of hotels have effectively done is outsource their marketing activities and their booking activities to a third party, right? So now what you're focused on heavily is the customer service side of the industry. And so if somebody said to you, well, how is this not outsourcing the customer service, further potentially commoditizing the product? How does Alice help with that or help hotels differentiate themselves, improve from that perspective without just giving away another piece of the business?
Right. No, it's a great question. So first and foremost, it's your software, not ours. We're more akin to Salesforce. You look at us using Salesforce. I don't think Salesforce is helping us make sales. They're not doing it for us. It's our tool. It's our data. Right. We're the ones using it. So when someone's buying it of us, we like to remind them that we're not the differentiator. How they use it is. We're just giving them the tool set. We're no different than when they gave them a radio or gave them a PMS. At the end of the day, it's not outsourced. It's a hotel cannot specialize in technology and being a hotel. So let us specialize in technology, let Flip2 and other companies specialize in technology, and just buy the ones that fit what you're already doing and help you be a hotel better. We're not automating. We're not responding to the guest. We're just giving you the technology for your staff to do it. And sometimes that's disheartening for us because we'll look at a hotel that doesn't use it so well and we think it's our fault. But just like they're not outsourcing the actual operation, we're not able to come in and be there every day communicating with their guests. We're just giving them the front desk the toolkit to do it.
Do you have data? Do you have data aggregation? Do you have anything along those lines that shows best practices that you make available to hoteliers, that you make available to the operations folks to say, hey, we've noticed hotels that do this bit particularly well see these kinds of improvements or things along those lines in Net Promoter Score, for instance?
Right. It's something we got very excited about 4 years ago, and then hotels got very afraid of it because it comes up with the idea of data sharing. So we don't do it between hotels that aren't part of the same group. Within a group, of course, they can look at each other's service times and ask why is one better than the other. I think that we would love to get to there. If you think about STR and benchmarking against your 5 booking competitors, it would be fantastic to also benchmark against your 5 similar service competitors. And if there was an operational benchmark, I think we're too early in our life cycle to be that yet. But I would be excited to, and I think hotels would opt in for that further down the line. Once you're looking past booking and at the total customer journey, those types of data points affect you and affect what your brand proposition is. And so I think it'd be very powerful. I just don't think anyone's there yet.
Right.
So talking about data, what do you really look at as the key KPIs? I mean, does it really come down to flat out response time or first touch resolution, or what are some of the things that you really look at the hotels to?
So we have 3 sides of the platform. We have the guest side, the back of house, which is housekeeping maintenance, and then the front of house, which is concierge, front desk, night shift, and guest services. So for the suite, for the whole platform, we're looking at how much of guest activity are we capturing? Because if a guest uses our app, uses SMS, uses web, but then the same guest might walk past the front desk, call down from the hotel room and email. If those 3 traditional methods of communication happen, then the staff is using Alice and plugging it in and dispatching it through Alice. So we're saying, can we capture 100% of what's happening in the hotel and move it away from analog and radio, which is non-track, you can't analyze. The second KPI is within that, after the request happens, what are the service times? If you have an SOP that says, I want to deliver a towel in 30 minutes, how often are you hitting that? And I think not just from a negative standpoint, but, it's also nice to appreciate the staff for doing your best work. And so, if you can both praise staff who are doing, impressive work as well as correct for mistakes and lapses, then a hotel can improve its consistent service delivery. And then the third simple statistic that we look at is can you actually just simply save money? Technology is getting easier to build, and where we're going into hotels, they might have a separate housekeeping system, a separate concierge system, a separate maintenance system. And can we simply clean it up, work with one provider and offer you the full package so that you can all be on the same platform so that you can understand it? And I think it's actually an easy way of running technology today.
Actually, just a follow-up, have you found hotels using the platform are able to lower those service standards? So if it was 30 minutes to deliver a towel, now they're more efficient and they can get it down to maybe 15 or something like that. Is that happening?
Yeah, we have. Point? I mean, I would love to send our 50 people out to a hotel with stopwatches before Alice and time everything. So it's not relative to before Alice, but once you have it, you can understand your new long run average normal. And then you can understand where and what times of day that you break that normal. And you can start analyzing it.
Sorry to come in so late with the concept of it, but in all honesty, you gave one of the most best value propositions. Being previous from the hotel side of things, GMs get told pretty much what they want to hear. And a lot of people have no need to validate what they tell the GM. Like, oh no, we're very quick on guest satisfaction. We respond right away. Yeah, housekeeping was right on top of that. Those are metaphors for we have no clue, and we think we're close. And so being able to have tangible data that says, look, we're improving. We've created a benchmark, and we're improving our timeline. We're improving our response rate. We're improving our capacity for. That's huge. That's huge to offer a hotel that says, I can actually tangibly track and improve my relationships with my guests when they're in house with just a simple stat like that.
Right.
Well, and just
I also
even,
I think
even
there's
tracking the guest activity that Alex started with, though. I mean, just knowing the flow, so you can actually have your staff set up and you go, oh, gee, these Saturday mornings when such and such is go, I guess we do need an extra person or something to go do this, or we take them off of cleaning rooms and doing turnover and getting them on taking care of something else.
Right. And I think, most companies use research and surveys today. I think David Ogilvy said it as a drunk uses a lamppost, right? Which is, I want support or validation. I want support or validation what I'm really doing, not illumination. And so trying to actually understand what are your guests complaining about and what are they actually doing is really key to understanding your experience, not just the experience you believe you've created. Because today, your consumers are selling to other consumers. You're not selling to them.
Right.
Taking advantage of having both Ed and you on the same show, is there a crossover in following the breadcrumbs when it comes to your engagement with Alice and the responses that you're getting from it, and it carrying over into the social sharing, social context of the perception of the property? Like, okay, because of what's being done at the property and Alice is recording that and influencing that, they're seeing the results within the social strata as well, Ed?
So when you look at hotels, that their service is impeccable, meaning they really didn't have a dark spot in the journey. It actually comes up in the storyline. So beyond just yes, you get more advocates because of it. There's no question, but it actually becomes the topic. Which we've seen and we've tested. We've been in situations where we've been afraid of what was being said because the hotel we knew wasn't going to give a great experience, but the property was so amazing. Like Robert said, that that our system was getting guests to just focus on that. But they also didn't have as many advocates. So yes, there is definitely, and it's really easy to track when you look at operational excellence and you look at resorts that just excel in operational excellence. They're also the highest performers on our platform. Because it's in your guests are the ones who are telling your story. And they're telling it through their version of your story. And so if their version of your story had a crappy check-in experience, then they get a bad timed SMS introducing you to SMS messaging. And then you write something and 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours later, you get the response to your simple SMS. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're not going to get as many advocates. Yes, it's not going to ruin someone's vacation, but it's also not going to have them out there, waving your flag to their family as an excellent place to go. So this is, and it's a challenging thing. And actually, Tim, the question you asked of him is something we deal with all the time at Flip2 too. Is I actually think just fundamentally hotels don't understand the concept of a platform, right, and what a platform means. And
we wrote a big report on that, and I can share it after the call during the call.
Careful, it'll end up on stpeter.com.
There's nothing wrong with getting a little extra promotion out there.
That's fine by us.
And actually, it's funny is Alex and Brian.
By the way, I'm pulling those leads, Ed.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Alex and Brian. So Alex on Alice and Brian from Flip2, I think, have kind of become a self-support system on the challenge of explaining to the hotel the difference between a company that is nothing more than a feature versus a platform. And so to answer it in a way that actually works for both of us. So if tomorrow, for some reason, smoke signals becomes the preferred method of communication for everyone, Flip2 will create something that puts off smoke signals. Alice will have some type of camera that senses smoke signals and puts them into an order process. And we'll both be able to do it within moments of validation that it's the way people want to communicate, because both platforms are actual platforms. Whereas when you go look at other technologies in the space that are not built on a modern approach to how you design platforms, they'll have to rewrite their entire system to support smoke signals. And you as a customer of them, are going to be stuck not being able to do smoke signals, even though your customers are putting them up there. And so that's one of the key elements that does make it different. So like, I agree with Alex. Like if I was the other communication companies, I'd be frightened of Alexa, but I also know for Alex, he probably already has it turned on and is probably already testing it. Right. Exactly. And that's the difference when you buy a platform. And that's also why you look at all the heavy rebuilds that have happened in some of the vendors that should have always been platforms, some of the CRS vendors and all that. And you look at what they're going through in the rewrite, they're actually restructuring to be a platform.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think that's what makes hospitality backend the most exciting sector right now within the whole travel tech ecosystem, is that we're at the cusp of everyone turning their systems and opening them up. And once they do that, it's going to get a lot more powerful and a lot more possible for a hotel to innovate and to actually meet these guest expectations and this expectation economy that we're in today.
Mm-hmm.
Which will be a very interesting challenge for the brands too, because in terms of working to the lowest common denominator and let's have consistent service and not letting them really do interesting things that their particular guests need, that's going to be a very interesting intersection.
Two technical things. One, I just realized that I've been ignoring Periscope's feedback. I need to remind everyone that's watching us on Periscope to please join us if they would like to participate at bit.ly/HDM show 69. So you can hype from what I'm not paying attention to. Now, this is our first official Periscope co-cast at this time. So I got Facebook going, I got Periscope going, and I'm not paying attention to nobody, man.
Lauren, if we had Alice, you would have that messaging. You would be able to respond to it, and we'd be able to take care of this.
So we appreciate the question in the comments. We have a question in the comments. So
yeah, I was about to say, and the other is Holly has a question, which is kind of a great question. What role will Expedia play in Alice?
Yeah, it's a great question. For those who don't know where it comes from, Expedia led our Series A. So we've raised 3 rounds of funding, and mostly with VCs, and then the most recent was led by Expedia. And so, what role do they play? I think there's two lenses for Alice. We're in an industry that's typically very hard to raise money and grow a company, because the sales cycle, everyone knows this, is tough in a hotel industry. Either you've got the big chains at the top, or you've got a very fragmented sales ecosystem at the bottom, and no one really knows who's the decision maker when it comes to selling into a hotel. It's part of the problem. Are we selling to the CMO? Are we selling to the GM? Are we selling to the operations director or to the owner?
That's often true within the hotel itself, actually.
Right. So when we looked at raising a round of funding, we went out and said, well, we would probably actually prefer a strategic investor, someone who has access to hotels they can introduce us to. And so for us, that's been the wonderful thing about having them, is they've been making introductions to hotels for us, right? At the end of the day, they're a minority investor. They don't have any responsibility to, but I think that as part of their journey, the OTA's journey, they're trying to figure out how to become more helpful to hotels and less of the let's call it the devil in the room. So I think Priceline made that move a few years before Expedia by building a hotel services division and providing better tools of services to hotels that could not afford them, because hotels at the end of the day can't build technology. They have to just adopt it. And I think Expedia is slightly behind it in that regard. Now, where does Expedia and Alice fit in long term? I'm not really sure. I think what we're trying to do is slightly bigger than just operations for hotels. We've got residential clients, we've got workplace clients, we've got outsourced concierge clients. We're building a true operations platform that fits any hospitality business. Hotels just happens to be our sweet spot because of my background, because of our team's background. But there's for us, we're playing along. We're hoping to be a Salesforce, not a small little operations technology. And so I think Expedia is a nice step for us in that journey. And I think it got us to the credibility we need to keep growing our own platform, to go to our next round of funding and keep growing internally.
Can I ask one of the more obvious, simple questions? Is what has been one of your greatest success stories that you can relate to? And because I'm curious as to how people are taking the data that you're providing them the retention of that data and its integration with other platforms to be better effective with everything that they have, to connect the dots in their daily operations, to connect the dots within their acquisition strategy, and certainly to connect the dots with the retention strategy after departure. What would be a great success story that you've seen somebody work with your platform well with the other platforms that they've been also using concurrently?
But before you answer that,
Yeah.
Lauren, you mean his second greatest success story? Because his first greatest success story was being invited onto the show.
Yeah,
I mean,
we made it.
Well, since you put it that way, I guess so. So technically advanced, and there's not been a hiccup since the beginning. Yeah, that's perfect.
I've had random actors on the street showing signs of Alice to Lauren in his daily life for the last month, accepting the idea of inviting us on the show. And so I'm glad it's worked. So our second greatest success story would, I think for us, it's been really about delivering more of what we've been doing to the staff. So we're in year 4, so we're really in year 3 of working with hotels. And this year we've started seeing a lot of our hotels adopt a lot more of our platform. You know, it is modular. You can start with just the concierge, and we've traditionally been the strongest in the concierge, primarily because there hasn't been much innovation in the concierge technology space. When I say that, there's been a lot of technology around concierge. Google Maps has disrupted them. Outsourced concierge companies have replaced them, but for the actual concierge hotels, there hasn't been much innovation for them, because most of the systems they use today are really just fancy notepads. They're not connected to the guests, they're not connected to the rest of the property, and they don't allow them to be a central communication hub for the guest. So for us, there's the expansion inside groups like Triumph, like Amsterdam, that have actually expanded us into their other pieces of their operation, so that we're truly running the entire hotel in between the PMS and the CRM. For individual properties that are more looking at the guest side, we've seen success in the resorts. We're lucky to have the Ocean Club in Bahamas as one of our clients, and this is a great example of when marketing meets operations. For them, the app works terrifically well. You know, they've got a clientele who's there for 7 days. They've got they're with families, and they're spread out. So if you're on the golf course or if you're on the beach, you can order food waiting for you in the room. But the reality is, no one would know about this if the actual people on property, the butlers that you get with that property, didn't introduce you to the idea of Alice, didn't put it on your phone for you and tell you how to use it. And so that's really a great example of where marketing was not enough. They really had to inject it into the operational side of the business. And now for them, they get a lot of guest engagement, and we've analyzed it, and we've seen that those who actually book direct are 2x more engaged on Alice. So now it's a nice story to bring back to the boss that says, look, give me more money to get more direct customers, because while we already understand that direct customers are valuable to us, here's some proof that they're 2x more valuable on their engagement side.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's great research that goes back, a couple of years now. Robert, you probably have this off top of your head. You're always good for these numbers. But Cornell did some research about.
You sure the Four Seasons didn't do it? You sure the Four Seasons didn't do it to him? It's just Cornell. Okay.
It was about Four Seasons.
Actually, you got to give Robert a pass on this one. On the bingo card, he's not the first one to bring up Cornell this time. But Cornell did some research that basically talked about RevPAR index, and you can use Net Promoter Score, you can use a number of different things, but review scores, et cetera, and the ability to actually drive RevPAR index based on that. I know I see with some clients I work with where that's absolutely true, where you index above based on whether you do semantic analysis of Alex really didn't like where this question was going.
Well, it's actually funny because
no, I'm kidding.
As he said,
the whole
I
fact of
one of their pitches this week.
Yeah,
they quote this in their pitch.
Right.
On the revenue that on the rate increase for every point.
Right.
You increase,
right.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like 11% for every point. Your rate goes up 11% for every
I don't remember
point.
the exact number. I will tell you, speaking from real world, not taking nothing away from the Cornell study, but we actually have applied this with a couple of clients, and we see it really works. I mean, the numbers are kind of too small a sample size in my specific case to say here's a percentage. I will tell you that every single client where they're doing these things well, their RevPAR index is crushing their
Yeah, it's too bad we lost Alex, because they actually, like you said, I sat in yesterday, watched them pitch. They actually talk about this study. So you're right on. And there he is.
And there he is.
How much does revenue increase every time you increase your guest review? You guys have it in your pitch, and that's what that's what Tim was talking about.
It was for every I think for every one star increase in ratings, you can increase your price point by 9%, and your revenue by 25% was the number on the guest.
So yeah, you're right on. There is study behind this.
Yeah.
It was in the Wall Street Journal this week. I'll send it around now.
Great.
The important part of that, though, is that better operations deserve a higher price point because they're creating value, and that's the bottom line. Because the analogy I'm using now for a lot of hotel industry who really gets geared into just a pure real estate sort of thing is you aren't selling mini storage sort of thing for like on a nightly basis, right? Which is kind of we've got this unit, here's the value, let's revenue manage it. And no, you get that price premium by providing, in some cases, upgraded facilities and things like that. True. Having a better location, yes, that's certainly a factor. But then the real differentiator is a service. And one of the great things about it isn't just for luxury properties. I mean, mid-scale properties, even economy properties, if they can run more efficiently and they have operations where they need to respond to the guests, it's a huge differentiator because the bar is so low from a lot of their competitors.
So let's talk about that. I mean, if people who are watching are operators of economy properties, as a for instance, obviously, Alex, there might be different pricing based on different types of properties or the like, but who is this accessible to, when we talk about different chain scales and the like? Which is kind of a less direct way of asking. So what's your pricing model look like?
So everyone has a service expectation because it doesn't matter what level property you are. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, we can hear you. Yep. We seem to be operating on a very slight lag, but we can hear you.
Alex, if you can hear us, plug into an Ethernet because wireless gets chewed up. Yeah.
One other point to add to this conversation that Alex, I don't know, I think inadvertently made, but as a solid one is where I made the comment that this adds measurability to GMs and operational leadership as to the success of their guest interaction. It also creates validation and reward and satisfaction to the staff that's providing it. That with Holly being on here, especially, she has to deal with this engagement process from the team's perspective on a persistent basis for what she does with Signature Series. And a lot of it is about lack of recognition, of lack of being able to identify. There's no measurability to it. And here Alice is providing both sides of that conversation, executive level understanding as to metrics and also team validation or identification when it comes to performance. Yep. So it can be used both sides of the unknown spectrum that most hotels seem to exist in right now.
Well, and one other point there that's worth pointing out is the other thing it should enable you to do is get on the front side of where you're going to run into problems. One of the biggest mistakes I ever saw a company do, and it was outside the hospitality industry, but it certainly resonates within the hospitality industry, was they gave a number of awards, monthly, quarterly, etc., to the people who did the best job putting out fires. And they wondered why they put so much of their time on putting out fires. And I was like, well, maybe you should give the awards to the people who prevent them in the first place.
Yeah.
Would that be the "We Didn't Start the Fire" award?
Right. Recognizing people, for actually doing the job well versus how well did we recover when we did a crap job in the first place.
Yeah.
And having access to the kind of data that I would think something like an Alice can provide you gives you a better sense of understanding, boy, we